This is Joe Wong, and we're at the end of ESL Pro League Finals Season 3, Day 1 of the playoff stage, and I'm here with Sadokist. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Very good. So let's quickly just recap. G2 had a crazy game against Fnatic. What did you think of their overall performance?
Yeah, I mean, this is the best tournament that G2's had. Obviously, the results speak for themselves in a very, very long time. Obviously, this core is kind of a mix of what the old Titan core used to be. But this was hands down the best they've looked, and Shock's in-game leading seems to have a better plan of what they're up to and what they want to achieve. Inferno was shaky. It looked very, very good at halftime. Having a 13-2 lead, you would expect the best of things, but obviously there was struggles closing that game out. And to be fair, that was the map that we Henry and I kind of thought was the biggest challenge for them going against, especially with Fnatic on Inferno. And the scary thought of that was if Fnatic gets rolling, they can just roll through a whole series at that point. And even though they don't have Olafmeister, it's still the same, beast of the other four. And Flush dropping 39 kills in the first map. Insane's one word. I mean, that was ridiculous. And in some ways, it's testament to G2 and how well they played that they were able to respond and close out Map 2 and Map 3 in a decent fashion. They had struggles on train. It was the similar thing as Inferno. It looked like it could be the similar thing. They lost a 5v3 after plant, which was a bit shaky. But I think that Body, in particular, has established himself well in this team. And I think that Smiths has stepped up on AWP. And I think those two contributing factors have made a huge difference to their success.
Right, yeah, I was going to continue on to that point. Do you think it's sort of Existence's removal and I guess Shock's in-game leading, or do you think it's just kind of Body plus some other players like RPK, Smiths just kind of stepping up to a new level that we haven't really seen before?
Yeah, I mean, the RPK thing's an interesting point because when they brought him back to the roster, it was kind of said that he didn't need to be tank of old. He didn't need to be the Counter-Strike source style of RPK. But as time went on, it was fairly evident that they needed some more fragging potential on that roster. So he's definitely had to step up, and it's been a slow process, but he's definitely. I mean, on train he was excellent. Holding Ivy, he's excellent, and that was one of the main factors on why their CT side was able to get so many rounds. So, I mean, he's definitely a benefit to them having improved over such time. I don't know that I want to say the removal of Existence is a key thing. I mean, it's hard to focus on that. He did bring a lot of different aspects to the team, but the fragging potential has improved with Body. I have to say, he's showing some flair that I think that they're benefiting from in other ways as well, because Existence was very passive, and Body seems to be a little bit more aggressive in certain situations. He's willing to take duels. He's willing to take real estate back when it's lost. He's very good at anchoring down off sites, so B site, Dust 2, which obviously we didn't see in that series, and B site on train. He's very, very good. So it's hard to say. I still think Existence is a more structured in-game leader, but I think it's the fragging overall that's helped G2.
Right. I mean, I don't necessarily mean the removal of Existence as, the player. Just more so, the in-game leading won't constantly be there. They won't be able to constantly refer to him and say, hey, what do we do now? And it's more, looser in that sense.
Well, in that sense, you're right. But also, it showed at the timeout on train that they did come up with a plan because they were able to close out the game. It's different styles. And obviously, the results speak for themselves. This is obviously working for them. But there are going to be situations when they could still benefit from that structure of Existence. But overall, I mean, I hate the saying, but they all say it. The proof is in the pudding. I think that where they are right now as a team is a pretty good spot. If they can keep this kind of consistency, we're in a position now where we have sort of 12 teams that can be consistent and among the top and sort of all maybe not beat each other. 12 can't beat one, but there's a good mix in the middle right now of where teams are, and G2 could step into that pretty easily.
Yeah, I was going to talk about that next. I was talking to Daps earlier on, and I was talking about how the NA scene has kind of risen as a whole, because last year or at the start of 2014, 2015, it was kind of just like Cloud9, Team Liquid, CLG. Before that, iBuyPower. It was kind of just 2-3 teams that not only could show up internationally or expected to be shown up internationally, but dominated domestically. And now you see in these various leagues multiple times now Cloud9 gets upset, or if you can even call it an upset, they get beat. Team Liquid get beat. So do you think now as the international scene grows as a whole, not even talking about NA, there are tons of teams now that can compete, not necessarily for number one, but top 5, top 6 kind of spots?
I and it's a very different thing in that sense. I get where you're trying to make with the comparison. I think that the NA situation is just that a lot of the talent is very spread out now. The iBuy power bands, I know this is a long time ago, but when that happened, it did kind of disperse some talent elsewhere because there wasn't one sort of team that everyone could focus on. Cloud9 looked like it would be that team, but when their struggles hit and then they started making changes, it's just kind of been a constant shuffle, and there's never been time for teams to develop. I think CLG is the best case where that team has been together for so long, and even they've now made another change with Fugly stepping aside. So North America is a little different to me because it's just such a larger pool to pick from. But the truth in what you're saying is that there are more teams that can mix it up. There are bottom talent that's risen up, so the gap from top to bottom is much closer. Last year was kind of the explosion of the Tier 1 division and Counter-Strike as a whole and all these top teams. So last year we had a defined, clear, top 6, if you will, right? Yeah. And it was very obvious from the Virtus Pros to the NIPs to the Fnatic, who was who. Luminosity wasn't in that mix at that time either, which you have to remember. They're now rated number 1 on HLTV, I think number 2 in Thorn's rankings. The difference now is because there's so much more sustainability and just basically income. It's just stable. Teams can last longer. It's more viable to be a pro player, and therefore players can afford to put more time into the game. So it wasn't just this year. It's not just the Tier 1 teams making money. It's the Dignitases. It's the the Tier 2 guys. Because of that, because they're putting more effort in, they've risen their game up. So now there's sort of a top 12 to 16 that's very well defined. And as we've noticed, if you have a slump, Envious or Virtus Pro Online.
Astralis maybe.
I wouldn't call Astralis as really a slump because they're still getting decent performances, but Virtus Pro and Envious are a testament to the fact that if you have a slump right now, it's not just losing a couple games to top teams and still coasting through group stages. You're screwed. Yeah. I mean, Envious now has to requalify for the next major. FaZe is the same thing, right? And you could argue FaZe wasn't as stable as the names I just mentioned, Virtus Pro and Envious, but the point is the top teams have to be weary. If they let off the gas pedal at all, there's teams right behind them now that are willing to jump on them. I mean, Dignitas is a prime example. They failed to make the major, but everything else they've been very successful. And Godsent now, I mean, Gambit looking fairly good. There's all kinds of examples.
Just maybe they were in the minor right now. I'm not sure what the result was.
I think Hellraisers beat them today. I haven't looked, but yeah, I mean, Ents is a team that still has some work to do, I think. But the point's there. I mean, they're also a team on salary. By the end of 2016, we could have 20 teams that are well-established, well-running machines. Now, that's not to say that we could have 20 teams that are easily capable of being number 1, but it means we have a very, very competitive landscape.
I guess this begs the question then, does this mean that tournaments or LANs more specifically need to sort of start to think about best of 3s as sort of the starting point now? Because, best of 1 wins, especially in such a volatile state now, you can't really get that much from it, like a best of 1 win from off Australis, like Optic, like that's a good result for them obviously, but then they get knocked out of group stage and it's like you don't really know how they measure up.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of just thinking about this to myself actually, not just after that series finished, just reflecting on this tournament and the fact that Australis could potentially, despite going out in groups, be the team that puts up the best complete series. G2 beat Luminosity, but not over best 3. They could be if G2 get blown out tomorrow, Astralis could have put the best series up against the team that ends up winning this and not even make it out of groups. But what I thought to myself was they still had best of 3 deciders. And although you could say the upsets came in the best of 1 and therefore that upset kind of still exists and it kind of throws things for a loop, I actually don't mind the best of 1 winners format with best of 3 decider matches because I think losers, so anything that's an elimination match. Okay. So you've got your best of 1 win, you've got your winners that goes through, and then you've got best of 3s for everything else. I think that's reasonable because it means the team's stamina is a little better. You're not worn out from playing best of 3s all weekend long. It cuts down on scheduling time, which cuts down on production costs. So we've got to be in buildings like this. You add days like that.
Literally only 2 best of 3s for the whole.
Yeah. Well, and it's 2 best of 3s here, but it's also the rental time to be in here. If you add another day, it's paying talent for another day. It's paying the crew, the production, renting out camera equipment. ESL owns most of theirs, I think, but I mean the point still stands. It's expensive to do that, and it's not that it's not worth doing. It's just that it does create a sense of efficiency. So I don't mind the best of 1 winners style. Ideally, yes, I would like to see best of 3s all the way through. I think specifically in the majors, I'd like to see that because that has more significance. But for a tournament like this, I think the best of 1s is fine in the winner situation. So You're right. Maybe with the whole landscape as it is, it does throw it for more of a curveball. But that's Counter-Strike. You still have a chance to make it through on best of threes. And Astralis, in this case, was the victim. But at the same time, you can't say, oh, well, they lost to Luminosity. Oh, boo-hoo. If they want to win, they've got to beat every team. So it doesn't matter if they play them in groups or they play them in the playoff stages. They've got to beat them. And that's the same for everyone.
Okay. That's reasonable. So we last spoke at Face It last year, and you were just kind of coming into your own as a caster. You know, you were a freelance guy for a while, hopping around ESCA, stuff like that, and then you got picked up by PGL. And then, you know, from there, that whole year was kind of a whole roller coaster for you. And then you announced you were kind of taking a break during the summer, June, July. Reddit was kind of, you know, sad, exploded with sadness. So do you want to elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, I mean, I found out on Reddit that I was taking a break the next morning too, if you know what I mean. No, I was out drinking, and to be clarified, I am going to be taking a break, but I didn't mean to dramatize it that much. What I'm really going to be doing, and this was always planned, I don't know if it was worthy of an announcement or not. I'm going to be stepping back a little bit. It just means not doing, you know, the HGC 1v1s. It means in that time, no studio time, so no ECS or ESL studio stuff. It means, you know, like I did ASUS Assembly this year, which was fine, or Assembly in Finland, that was fine. The HGC stuff's all fine. It's just that when I go away from home, so I left January 4th. I think I didn't get home till March 1st or something in that realm. And I was home for a little bit of time in March, but then I left again April 7th, and I haven't been home since. And I've been home 17 days all year. So in that time, you know, everyone was asking about the major. If they ask me, yeah, I'm going to do the major, of course. And there's probably about 2 other lands in that time that I will do. But everything else, forget it. I mean, I might even shut off my Twitter in that time and just be home, relax, mountain bike with my brother and my dog. She likes to run behind me when I mountain bike. But hang out with her and see some family and friends. And I think that's important. We do a lot of traveling, which is great. I'm a big traveler, but it's not glamorous travel. It's hotel venue. So maybe even in that time, just take an actual vacation somewhere. So just to clear my head. And it's not that I don't appreciate what I do. It's just that I don't want to get burnt out. I don't want to be to the point where I'm not doing my best work or I'm not enjoying myself, because this is super fun. And I feel like if I take some time off, I'll come back stronger for it. So that's the plan, I think, more than anything.
Right, and I mean, events like these, or sort of just 3-day lands, I guess, are, I guess, slightly less taxing than like a big league where you know, have to live there and be in the office every so often, like every day and stuff. So does that mean that you're not going to be appearing for E-League at all?
So the E-League, yeah, I mean, I don't know when they're going to do their official talent announcements. I don't even know. I know they've, you know, it's been whispered who's going to be there and whatnot. I don't know. E-League hasn't approached me.
E-League is very mysterious.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we know what's going on with teams, but I'll say it outright. I won't say anything further, but they haven't talked to me anything about anything specific. Yeah, I mean, at this point, if they came to me, it would be a hard one to refuse. But I think that first and foremost, the break needs to be a priority for myself. So yeah, I mean, like I say, it's just about taking time off to reset and refocus, I guess, and come back stronger and make sure that Henry and I can continue to provide good content.
Cool. One last thing. Let's talk about Inferno and Nuke.
Yeah.
So Inferno's going out of the pool. Pretty much guaranteed for the major, I think, and Nuke's coming in. I was talking to Daps again earlier, and he was saying, you know, Inferno, there could have been way more better choices to other than Inferno, because it's such a stable map. And although there are some issues with it, he feels like they could have picked like Dust 2 or Cobblestone even to take another look at it. And he feels like Nuke needs so many more updates, and you know, the major's coming so fast that it's not going to be fast enough or ready.
The issue on that point, I'll start there, and then I'll kind of work backwards into your question. The issue with Nuke not being ready for the major has to do with that no one's played it.
Exactly.
The minors, it's been sort of the ban process. It's been the third map on a few occasions, but never really even gotten that far. I think there's been one official match on it so far. That said, I don't know if it's been played at DreamHack Tour this weekend, so I could be wrong on that now. But before this weekend, it was played in one official match.
Yeah.
That's not enough information. You can't take the map and recreate it in time for a major if you don't have pro teams playing on it. And there's no question it needs work. There's some balance issues with it. Simple things like being able to see through catwalk from the ground, from the T perspective, and the CTs can't see you there. That's hugely overpowering. There's definitely some work to be done on the map. Now, I'm not opposed to them switching around the map pool. I've been an advocate for a seasonal-based map pool for a while, of which there could be 9 maps total. You play 7 of them. End of that season, exactly. You rotate them in and out. Maps like maybe Tuscan or Mill, whatever. It's basically the same map. If they fixed season, maybe something like Crown, if you brought back Inferno now with Nuke, there's a couple choices there. There really is. Even Fire, people have been working on a newer version of it that looks reasonable. They've fixed up the mid-vent, or the mid-fence that I hated in 1.6. I don't see issue with them putting Nuke in. I just want people to play it, and that's the issue. It is very quick. You're right. In terms of taking out Inferno, I think there's changes to be made on Inferno. I think there's a lot of textures that could be cleaned up. I think you could widen out Banana, clean it up a lot, get rid of the truck over by the pit, make that much cleaner for the sake of hitboxes. Maybe take the fence off of Graveyard so you can see people's head inside of it. It's very hard to spot out of the apartments. So things like that would make things much, much easier. But did it have to be removed to do that? I'm not sure. And I hope they don't go overkill with it and add some crazy second entrance into B or,
underground tunnel.
Yeah,
the pit.
Yeah, exactly. Like, they don't need to go too far. That would really, to me, it would kind of ruin the map, because Henry's been talking about this for a while as well. Adding the 10 extra seconds to the rounds that we have done has kind of made Inferno a better map. Inferno's the map that's benefited from the most, because it's a map that you use utilities on, you sell fakes on, and now with the extra 10 seconds, you've got more time to do that as a terrorist team. Yeah. So in some ways, we're seeing a new meta that was just developing on Inferno, and suddenly it's pulled out from under us.
I feel like Inferno, maybe last year, last year, it was getting super stale. Like, it was, CTs.
I would agree.
So many rounds.
Yeah.
It's just like smokes, wait out smokes, and smoke again. And then, last like 30 seconds, 20 seconds, just like running to B and get destroyed by Crim.
Yep, no, I would agree. I would totally agree with all of that. I think Inferno was very stale last year. But like I say, I think that it was just developing. Now, if I was to remove a different map, what would I remove? I mean, it's odd that a lot of people are saying Dust 2, because you can't mess with a classic. Like, that's a franchise map, and that's the problem. Yes, okay, it could benefit for changes for competitive sake, but you can't mess with a map that literally made your franchise, and people still play every day in matchmaking. Like, we have to consider, as much as I hate that, we have to consider the public community. To dictate esports, we do have to consider them, and because that's a large, percentage base of our, that is the majority of our percentage base, our population base. You could fix things like the skyboxes. You could open up smokes into B. I think that would be a change that I would welcome, but you could do that quickly. So I don't think Dust 2 would need a removal to be fixed. If I was to remove one, I actually like Cobblestone the way it is. You could tighten it up a little bit, but if I was to remove one, I would probably remove maybe Overpass. For me, I still think that there's some clutter on that map that could be cleaned, and some rotations that could be added. It is weird. It's a non-traditional map in the way that there's not a distinct mid to it. It's kind of a mid that leads to A, right? I guess Inferno's a bit like that, but there is still a distinct mid.
And they've changed things, the layout enough that the sort of entire map now feels kind of weird as a result. Like the whole theme feels off.
Yeah. I don't know. I would change, I think, the mid rotation more than anything. But this is my thing. I mean, the maps are actually all playing reasonably well right now. Yeah. It seems to be. It just comes down to who plays what in terms of teams. Cash seems good. The new vents seem great. The new forklift looks like it's going to be promising. But yeah, I mean, I think Overpass would be the one to if I had to pick, I would remove to fix again. Okay. But it's a Valve creation. It's a new creation, so God knows if they'd want to.
Well, the lights seem to have dimmed and then brightened again. So I don't know if they're kicking us out. So we'll try and wrap up. How do you think? What would be the best way for Valve to introduce new maps? Now, I come from StarCraft 2, and they had some troubles introducing, new ladder maps and new. Right now, they've completely switched the lights off. So, how do you think? The trouble with Nuke is that no one's played it. So, how do Valve get pro players to play a map?
I mean, putting it in the map pool, eventually it's going to get played.
Exactly.
It's inevitable, and especially the thing that they do that was famous at ESL One Cologne and in Cluj is the randomizer.
Exactly,
That's going to bring the map into the pool inevitably. So, in some senses, that'll work with Nuke. But again, it's the problem with Nuke is that I don't think it's balanced enough yet.
Yeah.
I mean, seasonal map pool would work. Valve has the option to put maps into the workshops and try and implement them in further. I think additional map pools for competitive matchmaking could be an option so that people can just have a chance to play more than those 7. That doesn't mean that the pros need to do more than 7, but there's all kinds of ways Valve could make maps more played. But at a pro level, really, the randomizer is their only option, and just a matter of time. It's a matter of time before a team eventually goes, wait, our map pool's weak. Like for Luminosity, for example, they're not good on cash. They've tried it, failed it at Malmö. Yep. They went back to Dust 2. They're still struggling with it. They haven't tried Dust or Nuke. Maybe eventually they go, you know what? No one's playing Nuke. Let's just learn it. And then they start bringing it into map pools. No one's playing it. Then everyone goes, wait a minute, we need to learn Nuke to play against them. And then everyone starts to learn Nuke. I mean, it can happen like that. But for Valve's sake, there's nothing they can do to really force it. It's just going to have to happen now that it's in the pool. I mean, that's basically already forcing it there by putting it there.
I mean, I guess a better question would be how do they put in a map without questioning the competitive integrity of games or tournaments where a final could be won just because a team played Nuke or something.
I mean, that essentially did happen last year with Cobblestone at X Games. In the final, it was NIP versus Envious. It went to Cobblestone. It was an excellent best of 3. First 2 maps were nail-bitingly close, and then it went to the third map, and it was Cobblestone, and basically NIP had no idea what to do on the map because they didn't play it at the time. So I mean that has happened, and at the time everyone was very disappointed about it. But you know what? You move on, and it's part of the game. So you had the equal opportunity to learn the map as much as I did. It's not favorable. No one's going to like it. Everyone's going to kind of be frowning upon it. But it's the same for everyone. And at some point that will happen, and teams will quickly realize it and start to learn it. It sounds like a brutal way to do it, but it is the only way you can kind of crowbar a map into the pool right now. So that's the only way I kind of see it working.
Cool. So do you have any last words or shout-outs?
Shout out to Henry G.